The clock on the wall showed 2 in the morning. Elena Reyes wiped down the counter at Rosie's Diner for the 3rd time that night. Her feet hurt, her back ached, but she kept moving because standing still meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering all the things she could not change. Memphis, Tennessee was a city of music. Blues filled the streets, jazz poured from the bars, soul lived in the churches. But for Elena, music lived only in the quiet moments when nobody was watching. She was 24 years old, and she had worked at Rosie's Diner for almost 3 years. The pay was small, the hours were long, the customers were sometimes kind and sometimes cruel, but the job kept the lights on in her tiny apartment, and that was enough. Elena had not always lived this way. She grew up in El Paso, Texas, in a small house with yellow walls and a garden full of flowers her mother planted every spring. Her father left when she was 7. She barely remembered his face now. Her mother, Rosa, raised her alone. Rosa worked as a cleaner in big office buildings. She left before sunrise and came home after dark. But no matter how tired she was, Rosa always sang while she cooked dinner. Old songs from Mexico, church hymns, love songs from the radio. Elena learned to sing by listening to her mother. Those were the happy years, simple but full of love. Then Rosa got sick. The doctors said it was her lungs. Years of breathing cleaning chemicals had damaged them. The medical bills grew like a mountain that Elena could not climb. She dropped out of community college. She took extra shifts. She sent money home every month. But it was never enough. She moved to Memphis because a friend told her there was more work there. The friend was wrong, but by then, Elena had no money to go back. She found the job at Rosie's Diner and stayed. 3 years passed like slow water. The diner was old. The seats were red leather that had cracked with time. The floor was black and white tiles that Elena mopped every night. The kitchen smelled of coffee and fried eggs and bacon grease. A jukebox sat in the corner, but it had been broken for years. Nobody bothered to fix it. The owner, a large man named Earl, said fixing it would cost too much money. Elena worked the night shift because it paid a little more. From 10 at night until 6 in the morning, she served coffee to truck drivers, police officers, and lonely people who had nowhere else to go. She learned their names. She remembered how they liked their eggs. She smiled even when she did not feel like smiling because tips meant survival. But the best part of her shift came after closing. When the last customer left and Earl went home, Elena was alone with the empty diner. She turned off most of the lights. She filled a bucket with soapy water. She grabbed the mop, and then she sang. Her voice was not trained. She had never taken a single lesson. But when she opened her mouth, something beautiful came out. It was a voice that carried pain and hope in equal measure. It was a voice that told stories without needing words. She sang old soul songs. She sang the hymns her mother taught her. She sang whatever came into her heart. The empty diner became her stage. The tables and chairs became her audience. The fluorescent lights hummed along with her melody. In those moments, Elena was not a tired waitress with aching feet. She was free. She was herself. She was the person she might have become if life had been kinder. She never told anyone about her singing. Not her co-workers. Not her few friends. Not even her mother during their weekly phone calls. Singing was her secret, her private treasure. She was afraid that if she shared it, someone would take it away or tell her she was not good enough. So she kept it hidden like a small flame she protected from the wind. Some nights she sang until the sun started to rise. She would see the first light coming through the windows and realize hours had passed. Then she would hurry to finish mopping, lock up the diner, and walk home through the quiet streets. Memphis looked different in the early morning, peaceful, almost magical. The music clubs were closed. The tourists were sleeping. It was just Elena and the city waking up together. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building. The elevator never worked. The hallway smelled of cooking and cigarette smoke. Her room was small, just a bed, a table, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom with a shower that sometimes gave hot water. But it was hers. She had decorated the walls with pictures her mother sent from El Paso, flowers from their old garden, a photo of Rosa when she was young and healthy and beautiful. Elena would fall asleep as the city came alive outside her window. She would dream of stages and bright lights and crowds of people calling her name. But when she woke up each afternoon, those dreams disappeared. She made herself coffee. She checked her phone for messages from her mother. She counted the money she had saved. And then she got ready to do it all again. She told herself this was just temporary. She told herself things would get better. But 3 years had passed, and she was still at Rosie's Diner, still mopping floors, still singing only when nobody could hear. Sometimes customers would ask her about her life. She always gave the same answer. She was fine. Everything was fine. She had plans. She was saving money. Maybe she would go back to school someday. Maybe she would move to a bigger city. Maybe. The word was easy to say but hard to believe. One night, after a particularly difficult shift, a customer had yelled at her for bringing the wrong order. It was not her mistake. The cook had made an error, but she apologized anyway. She always apologized. That was what waitresses did. Later, alone in the diner, she did not feel like singing. She sat in a booth and cried instead. But the tears did not last long. Elena had learned that crying did not pay bills. She wiped her face, stood up, grabbed the mop, and started cleaning. And somewhere between the tables and the counter, a song began to form in her throat, soft at first, then stronger. She sang about being tired. She sang about being strong. She sang about holding on when holding on seemed impossible. That was the thing about Elena's voice. It did not hide from pain. It turned pain into music. And in that empty diner on 5th Street, the music was the most honest thing in the world. She just did not know that soon, someone would hear it. The rain started around midnight. It was the kind of rain that made people run for cover and cars slow down on the streets. The diner was almost empty. Only 2 customers sat at the counter, a young couple sharing a piece of pie and speaking in low voices about their future. Elena refilled their coffee and left them alone with their dreams. The door opened at exactly 2 in the morning. A man walked in, bringing the smell of rain and cigarettes with him. He wore a suit that looked expensive but wrinkled, like he had been wearing it for days. His hair was gray at the sides. His face was tired. His eyes carried a heaviness that Elena recognized. It was the look of someone who had lost something important. She watched him choose booth 7, the one in the far corner near the broken jukebox. He sat down slowly, like every movement took effort. He did not look at the menu. He just stared out the window at the rain falling on 5th Street. Elena walked over with her notepad. "Good evening," she said. "What can I get for you?" The man looked up at her. His eyes were brown and sad. "Coffee," he said. "Just coffee. Black. Anything to eat. The apple pie is fresh. Made it myself this afternoon." He almost smiled. "Apple pie then. Why not?" Elena brought him his coffee and pie. He thanked her quietly and returned to staring at the rain. She did not ask questions. Working the night shift had taught her that some people came to diners not for food but for shelter. Warm place to sit when the world felt too cold. The man in booth 7 was Marcus Webb. Though Elena did not know his name yet, 20 years ago, Marcus had been one of the most respected music producers in Nashville. He had discovered 3 platinum artists. He had won awards. He had a big house, a beautiful wife, and more money than he could spend. People called him a genius. They said he could hear star quality in a voice the way some people could smell rain before it fell. But success had made him careless. He started drinking too much. He made bad business decisions. He trusted the wrong people. One by one, his artists left for bigger labels. His wife filed for divorce. The bank took his house. The industry that had celebrated him started to forget him. He moved to Memphis 5 years ago, hoping to start fresh. But fresh starts were hard when your reputation was ruined. He worked small jobs producing demos for local bands, teaching music at a community center, anything to pay rent. The bottle remained his closest companion. He was 52 years old, and he had given up on everything except surviving one more day. Tonight he had received a phone call from his daughter. She was getting married next spring. She had not invited him to the wedding. She said it would be too complicated to explain him to her future husband's family. Marcus had hung up the phone, put on his old suit, and walked into the rain without knowing where he was going. He ended up at Rosie's diner because the lights were on and the door was open. The coffee was hot and strong. The pie was sweet and reminded him of his grandmother's kitchen. He watched Elena move around the diner, taking orders, wiping tables, smiling at the young couple. She moved like someone who was used to being invisible. He recognized that too. Around 3 in the morning, the young couple left. A few minutes later, Earl came out of the kitchen, said goodnight to Elena, and walked out the back door. Marcus knew he should leave too. The rain had stopped. There was no reason to stay, but something kept him in booth 7. Maybe it was the warmth of the diner. Maybe it was the pie. Maybe it was just the fear of going back to his empty apartment. He decided to have one more cup of coffee. Elena did not notice him anymore. She thought he had left with the others. She checked the door, locked it, and went to the supply closet for her mop and bucket. The familiar routine began. She turned off most of the lights, leaving only a soft glow over the counter. She filled the bucket with soapy water, and then, without thinking, she started to sing The Song Was at Last by Etta James. Elena's mother used to sing it while cooking Sunday dinner. It was a song about finding love after waiting so long, about dreams finally coming true. But when Elena sang it, the words carried something deeper. They carried loneliness and hope and the kind of longing that comes from wanting a life that seems forever out of reach. Her voice filled the empty diner. It bounced off the windows and the old jukebox and the red leather seats. It was raw and powerful and completely without pretense. She was not performing. She was not trying to impress anyone. She was just singing because singing was how she survived. Marcus Webb sat frozen in booth 7. He had stopped breathing. In 52 years of life, in 30 years of working with music, he had never heard anything like this voice. It was not perfect in the technical sense. It had rough edges and unexpected turns, but it had something that no vocal coach could teach: truth. This woman's voice told the truth in a way that made his heart ache. He thought about all the singers he had discovered over the years, the ones who became famous, the ones who faded away. They all had talent. They all had ambition. But this waitress, singing alone in an empty diner at 3 in the morning, had something none of them had. She had a voice that made you believe. Believe in love, in pain, in hope, in every broken dream that still refuses to die. Alina finished the song. She took a deep breath and continued mopping, moving toward the back of the diner. She still did not know Marcus was there, hidden in the shadows of booth 7. He knew he should say something. But what? Hello? I am a washed-up producer who used to be somebody. Hello, your voice is the most beautiful thing I have heard in 20 years. Hello, I think I finally found a reason to stop drinking. Instead, he quietly stood up. He left a $20 bill on the table, far too much for coffee and pie, and he walked out into the night without saying a word. Alina found the money the next morning. When she was doing her final check of the tables, she did not remember anyone sitting in booth 7. She thought maybe Earl had left it as a tip, though that would have been unusual. She put the money in her pocket and finished locking up the diner. Outside, Marcus Webb stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the neon sign that said Rosie's Diner. He lit a cigarette and made a decision. He would come back tomorrow, and the next night, and the next. He needed to hear that voice again. He needed to know who this woman was. For the first time in 5 years, Marcus Webb had something that felt like purpose. It was small and fragile, like a candle flame in a dark room, but it was there, and he was not going to let it go out. Marcus came back the next night, and the night after that. For 6 nights in a row, he walked into Rosie's Diner at exactly 2 in the morning, sat in booth 7, and ordered coffee and apple pie. Alina started to recognize him. She thought he was strange but harmless, maybe a lonely businessman. Maybe a man going through a divorce. Maybe just someone who really liked apple pie. She tried making conversation a few times. She asked if he was from Memphis. He said no, originally from Nashville. She asked what brought him to the city. He said work, but he did not explain what kind of work. He was polite but quiet, and Alina learned to respect his silence. Some customers wanted to talk, others wanted to be left alone. Marcus was clearly the second kind. What Alina did not know was that Marcus stayed hidden in booth 7. Every night after closing, he sat in the dark corner and listened to her sing. Each night brought a different song, sometimes old Motown classics, sometimes gospel hymns, sometimes songs he did not recognize, songs that might have been coming straight from her heart. Each night, her voice amazed him more. He started taking notes on napkins. He wrote down observations about her range, her tone, her emotional delivery. He was thinking like a producer again for the first time in years. He imagined how her voice would sound in a proper studio with good equipment and careful mixing. He imagined the songs he would choose for her, the style he would develop around that raw power, but he also felt afraid. His last few attempts to help artists had ended in disaster. His reputation in the industry was ruined. He had no money, no connections, no label backing him up. What could he possibly offer this woman? A broken-down producer's promises. On the 6th night, Alina sang a song he had never heard before. It was slow and sad, about a daughter watching her mother grow old and sick. The words were simple, but they cut like knives. When she finished, Alina leaned against her mop and wiped her eyes. Marcus realized she had been crying while she sang. That was the moment he knew he had to speak to her. Whatever the risk, whatever the embarrassment, he could not let this voice remain hidden in an empty diner forever. The next night, Marcus did not sit in booth 7. He waited until 3 in the morning, after Earl left and the diner was closed. Then he knocked on the door. Elena was in the back filling her mop bucket. She heard the knock and froze. Nobody knocked on the diner door at 3 in the morning. She walked slowly to the front, her heart beating fast. Through the glass, she saw the man from booth 7. She opened the door a crack. "We are closed," she said. "I know," Marcus said. "I'm not here for coffee. I'm here because I've been listening to you sing." Elena's face went pale. "What, for the past week?" "Every night after closing. I've been sitting in the corner, listening. Your voice, it's extraordinary. I've worked in music for 30 years, and I have never heard anything like it." Elena's first emotion was anger. This stranger had been hiding in the dark, spying on her private moments. How dare he? But then the anger turned to shame. Her singing was secret. It was personal. It was never supposed to be heard by anyone. "You should not have done that," she said quietly. "I know. I apologize. But I am glad I did." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. It was old and worn, the edges soft from years of sitting in his wallet. "My name is Marcus Webb. I used to be a music producer in Nashville. I have worked with some famous artists, or I did, a long time ago." Alina looked at the card. The name meant nothing to her. "What do you want?" "I want to help you. I want to record a demo of your singing. Something you can use to show to record labels, to managers, to anyone who might help you get the career you deserve." Alina almost laughed. She handed the card back to him. "Thank you, but no." "Why not?" "Because this is not a movie," Alina said. "This is real life. I have bills to pay. I have a mother who is sick. I do not have time for fairy tales. Some stranger walks into a diner and says he can make me a star. That does not happen. Not to people like me." Marcus understood her doubt. He had heard similar words from other talented people who had been beaten down by life. "I'm not promising to make you a star. I'm just offering to record a demo. 3 songs. If nothing comes of it, you lose nothing. But if something does come of it, then what?" I go to Nashville. I leave my job. I take a chance on a dream while my mother is dying in El Paso. Elena shook her head. Dreams are for people with safety nets, Mr. Webb. I do not have a safety net. I have a mop and a bucket and a shift that starts again in 19 hours. She started to close the door, but Marcus held up his hand. Just think about it, please. You have a gift. I have seen many singers in my life, and most of them have talent but no soul. You have both. The world deserves to hear your voice. Elena paused. Nobody had ever said anything like that to her before. For a moment, she let herself imagine what it would feel like to sing on a real stage, with real microphones, for real people who wanted to listen. Then she shook the thought away. Good night, Mr. Webb. She closed the door and locked it. She went back to mopping, but she did not sing that night. Her throat felt tight, her hands were shaking. She felt angry and confused and strangely hopeful, and she did not know what to do with any of those feelings. Marcus stood outside the diner for a long time, watching her through the window. He had expected her to say no. People who had been hurt by life always said no at first. They were protecting themselves. They were afraid to hope, but he was not going to give up. He had seen too much, heard too much. Elena Reyes had a voice that could change her life and maybe his life too. He just needed to find a way to make her believe it. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus returned to the diner every night. He did not hide in booth 7 anymore. He sat at the counter, in plain sight, drinking his coffee. He did not mention music. He asked Elena about her day, about her mother, about her favorite foods. He told her about his own life, the good parts and the bad parts. Honestly and without self-pity. Slowly, Elena began to trust him. He was not a scam artist or a creditor. He was just a tired man who had made mistakes and was trying to find his way back. She recognized that struggle. She lived it every day. One night, after a particularly long shift, Elena sat down across from Marcus at the counter. If I did this demo thing, she said quietly, how would it work? I do not have any money for studios or equipment. Marcus's eyes lit up. You don't need money. I know a guy who owes me a favor. He has recording equipment. We could set it up right here, in the storage room. You would just need to sing, that's all. Just sing. Elena looked around the empty diner. She thought about her mother, getting weaker every month. She thought about her own life, stuck in the same place for 3 years. She thought about the songs she sang every night to nobody. Okay, she said finally. 3 songs. But I am not promising anything. Marcus smiled a real smile, the first one in years. 3 songs, he agreed. That is all I ask. The storage room at the back of Rosie's diner was small and crowded. Boxes of napkins and ketchup bottles lined the walls. The floor was concrete. The single light bulb gave everything a yellow color. It was not a professional studio. It was barely even a room. But for Elena Reyes, it became the most important place in the world. Marcus's friend was named Tommy Chen, a sound engineer who had lost his job at a Nashville studio 2 years ago. Tommy still had his equipment, microphones, mixers, a laptop with recording software. He owed Marcus a favor from the old days, when Marcus had helped him get his first job. When Marcus called and explained the situation, Tommy drove 4 hours from Nashville to Memphis with his equipment in the back of his old van. They set up on a Saturday night after the diner closed. Tommy hung blankets on the walls to improve the sound. He positioned the microphone in the center of the room, between the boxes of supplies. He tested the levels while Elena stood nervously in the corner, watching these 2 men work as if they knew exactly what they were doing. Whenever you were ready, Marcus said gently. Elena stepped up to the microphone. She had never seen a professional microphone before. It looked expensive and fragile. She was afraid to touch it. Just pretend we are not here, Marcus said. Pretend you are alone, mopping the floors, singing to yourself. That is all. Elena closed her eyes. She took a deep breath, and she began to sing. The first song was Amazing Grace. She had learned it from her mother, who had learned it from her grandmother. It was a simple song, but Elena filled it with years of pain and faith. Her voice trembled on the high notes, not from weakness but from emotion. Tommy watched his recording meters with wide eyes. Marcus sat perfectly still, barely breathing. When she finished, nobody spoke for a moment. Then Tommy cleared his throat. That was 1 take. Perfect. Do you want to hear it back? Elena shook her head. She did not want to hear her own voice through speakers. It would feel too strange. Like looking at a photograph of yourself that someone took without permission. They recorded 2 more songs that night. One was an old soul song that Elena loved. The other was a song she had written herself, the one about her mother. About watching someone you love grow weak while you can do nothing to help. She cried during that one, but she kept singing through the tears. By 3 in the morning they were finished. Tommy packed up his equipment, shook Elena's hand, and wished her luck. He told Marcus he would have the demo finished in 2 days. After Tommy left, Elena and Marcus sat in the empty diner drinking coffee. Neither of them knew what to say. Something important had happened, but neither of them could explain it. Now what? Elena asked. Now I send it to everyone I know, Marcus said. Every label, every manager, every producer who might remember my name. We wait and see. Elena nodded. She did not feel hopeful. She felt tired and exposed, like she had shown a stranger her diary. but it was done now. There was no taking it back. 2 days later, Marcus sent the demo to 47 people. He wrote personal emails explaining who Alina was, where he found her, why he believed in her. He attached the 3 songs and waited. The responses came slowly. Some people never replied at all. Others sent polite rejections. Thank you for thinking of us, but this is not the right fit for our label. A few were less kind. One executive wrote back saying that Marcus should stop embarrassing himself by pretending he was still relevant in the music industry. Marcus did not tell Alina about that email. He did not tell her about most of the rejections. When she asked how things were going, he said people were listening, considering, taking their time. He did not want to crush her hope before it had a chance to grow. Weeks passed. Alina continued working at Rosie's Diner. She continued singing after closing, though now she felt strange about it, knowing that somewhere out there, strangers might be listening to her voice on their computers. Marcus continued sending emails, making phone calls, trying to find anyone who would give Alina a chance. 1 month turned into 2. 2 months turned into 3. The rejections piled up like autumn leaves. Marcus started sleeping badly. He started drinking again, just a little at first, then more. He had believed so strongly in Alina's voice, but the industry did not share his belief. Maybe he had been wrong. Maybe his ears were broken, like his career, like everything else in his life. Alina noticed the change in Marcus. He looked older, sadder. He stopped coming to the diner every night. When he did come, he ordered whiskey instead of coffee. She wanted to tell him it was okay, that she had never expected anything from the demo anyway, but she could not find the words. One night, Marcus did not come at all. Alina mopped the floors in silence. She did not feel like singing. The magic had gone out of the routine. Now it just felt like work. The next morning, Marcus woke up on his kitchen floor. Empty bottles surrounded him. His phone was dead. He had not eaten in 2 days. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the man looking back. This was rock bottom. He had been here before, after his divorce, after losing his label. He knew what came next. Either he found a reason to climb back up, or he let himself sink until there was nothing left. He thought about Alina, about her voice, about the way she sang with her whole heart, even when no one was listening. If she could keep going after everything life had thrown at her, maybe he could too. He plugged in his phone and waited for it to charge. When it finally turned on, he saw 17 missed calls and 6 new emails. His heart sank. Probably more rejections. More people telling him he was a failure. But then he opened the first email. It was from a small independent label in Nashville called Riverside Records. He had never worked with them before. They were too small for him when he was successful, and he was too damaged for them after his fall. The email was short. Dear Marcus, we listened to your demo. We would like to meet Alina Reyes. Can she come to Nashville this week? Please call us as soon as possible. Marcus read the email 3 times. He read it out loud to make sure it was real. Then he sat down on his floor and cried, not from sadness, but from something he had not felt in years. Hope. He ran to Rosie's Diner that night. Alina was serving a truck driver at the counter. Marcus burst through the door looking wild, his hair uncombed, his clothes wrinkled. Alina, he said, out of breath, they want to see you. A label in Nashville. They heard the demo. They want to meet you. Alina set down the coffee pot. She looked at Marcus like he was speaking a foreign language. What? Riverside Records? It is a small label, but it is real. They want you in Nashville. This week. Alina felt the room spin. This could not be happening. Things like this did not happen to waitresses who sang alone in empty diners. But Marcus was standing in front of her, shaking with excitement, and he did not look like a man who was lying. This week, she repeated. Yes, we need to go. We need to find a way to get there. Alina looked around the diner at the cracked leather seats, the broken jukebox, the counter she had wiped 1,000 times. She thought about her bank account with $42 in it. She thought about her mother in El Paso. She thought about everything she would be risking if she said yes. But then she thought about her voice, trapped in this storage room forever. She thought about dying without ever knowing what might have been. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I will go. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday. Today was Monday. Alina had 3 days to find a way to get from Memphis to Nashville, and she had no money to make it happen. A bus ticket cost $45. Alina had $42 in her account. She could not ask her mother for help. Rosa needed every penny for medicine. She could not ask Marcus. He was living on instant noodles and borrowed hope. She thought about asking Earl for an advance on her paycheck. But Earl had already helped her twice this year, and she did not want to seem desperate. That night at work, Alina was quieter than usual. Her co-workers noticed. Maria, a middle-aged woman who worked the day shift, asked if everything was okay. Alina said she was fine, just tired. But Maria kept watching her with concerned eyes. After closing, Alina sat alone in the diner. She did not mop the floors. She did not sing. She just sat in booth 7, Marcus's booth, and tried to figure out how to make the impossible happen. The next morning, Maria called her. I heard from Marcus, she said. He told me about Nashville. Alina's heart sank. She had asked Marcus to keep the news quiet until she figured out the travel problem. But Marcus was too excited to stay silent. Maria, please do not tell anyone. Too late, Maria said. I told everyone, and we are having a meeting at the diner tonight, 8 o'clock, before your shift. Be there. Alina arrived at 8, nervous and confused. The diner was full not with customers, but with her co-workers. Maria was there. So was Earl, the owner. So were the cooks, the other waitresses, even old Jimmy who delivered supplies every Tuesday. They stood around the counter looking at Alina with serious faces. What is this? Alina asked. Earl stepped forward. He was holding a coffee can, the same can they used to collect tips during the holiday season. He put it on the counter in front of Alina. We all put in what we could, he said. It is not much, but we want you to go to Nashville. Alina looked inside the can. It was full of crumpled bills and coins. She started counting, but her hands were shaking too much. Maria took the can and counted for her. $327, Maria announced. Enough for a bus ticket, food, and maybe a cheap hotel for one night. Elena's eyes filled with tears. These were people who worked for tips and minimum wage. These were people who had their own bills, their own sick relatives, their own broken dreams, and they had given their money to her. I cannot take this, Alina said. It is too much. You can and you will, Earl said. He was not a sentimental man. He had barely spoken 10 words to Alina in 3 years, but his voice was firm. You've worked hard in this diner. You never complained. You always showed up. That means something, and if you have a chance to get out of here and do something with your life, then by God, you are going to take it. Maria hugged her. The cooks clapped. Old Jimmy blew his nose loudly and said something about dust in his eyes. That night, Alina did not work her shift. She went home and packed. She did not own a suitcase, so she borrowed one from Mrs. Chen, her elderly landlord. Mrs. Chen lived in the apartment below Alina's. She had come to America from Hong Kong 50 years ago with nothing but the clothes on her back. She had built a small real estate business through decades of hard work. When Alina explained about Nashville, Mrs. Chen disappeared into her apartment and came back with $200 in cash. I cannot accept this. Mrs. Chen, you think I am giving you a gift? Mrs. Chen laughed. This is a loan. When you become a famous singer, you pay me back double. Deal. Alina hugged the tiny woman so hard she worried she might break her. Deal. The next morning, Alina boarded a Greyhound bus at 6 o'clock. The Memphis skyline glowed orange in the rising sun. She watched it through the dirty window as the bus pulled away, wondering if she would ever see it again. The drive took 4 hours. Alina tried to sleep but could not. She kept thinking about what waited for her in Nashville. A record label, real music executives, people who would judge her voice, her appearance, her worth. What if she opened her mouth and nothing came out? What if they hated her? What if this whole trip was a mistake? She arrived in Nashville at noon. The city was bigger than Memphis, louder, more crowded. Music came from everywhere, bars, street corners, passing cars. This was the city of dreams, the place where people came to become stars. Most of them failed. Alina knew the odds, but she was here anyway. Marcus met her at the bus station. He had driven from Memphis early that morning in his ancient car, which had broken down twice along the way. He looked almost as nervous as she felt. Are you ready? He asked. No, Alina said honestly, but I am here. The offices of Riverside Records were on the 3rd floor of a small building downtown. The lobby was modest, a few gold records on the walls, a reception desk, a couch that had seen better days. Alina had expected something more impressive, but maybe that was good. Maybe a small label would take more time with her, give her more attention. A young man led them to a conference room. 3 people waited inside, 2 men and a woman, all dressed in casual clothes. They smiled and shook Alina's hand. They asked about her trip, offered her water, made small talk about the weather. They were nice, but Alina could see them studying her, measuring her, wondering if she was worth their time. Finally, the woman whose name was Janet leaned forward. Alina, we loved your demo. Your voice is special, but demos can be deceiving. Would you be willing to sing something for us? Right now, without any music or microphones. Alina's throat went dry. This was the moment. Everything came down to this. She stood up slowly. She did not know what to sing. All the songs she had practiced on the bus ride suddenly vanished from her mind. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe. And then, without planning it, she began to sing Amazing Grace. It was the first song she had recorded in the storage room. It was the song her mother had taught her years ago, in their little house with the yellow walls. Alina had sung it 100 times, maybe 1,000, but she had never sung it like this, with everything on the line, with 3 strangers deciding her future, with her whole life hanging in the balance. Her voice filled the small conference room. It bounced off the walls, the windows, the gold records. It was raw and imperfect and completely honest. Alina forgot about the executives. She forgot about Marcus watching from the corner. She forgot about the bus ride and the borrowed money and the fear. She just sang, the way she had always sung, alone in the diner with her mop and her bucket and her dreams. When she finished, the room was silent. Janet had tears in her eyes. The 2 men were staring at Alina like they had seen a ghost. Nobody spoke for a full minute. Then Janet stood up. She walked to Alina and took her hands. Where have you been hiding all your life? She asked quietly. Memphis, Alina said. Rosie's Diner, Table 5, Booth 7, the counter on weekends. Janet laughed. It was a warm laugh, full of genuine joy. Well, Elena Reyes, I think your diner days are over. We would like to offer you a recording contract with Riverside Records. Nothing fancy, we are a small label with small budgets. But we believe in you, and we want to help you share your voice with the world. Elena looked at Marcus. He was crying, this tough, broken man who had lost everything and found purpose again in her voice. He nodded at her. Unable to speak, Elena turned back to Janet. Okay, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Okay. Yes, I will do it. She signed the papers that afternoon. The contract was modest, a small advance, a promise of one album, a long list of things she did not fully understand. But it was real. It was happening when she walked out of the building. The Nashville sun was setting. The streets were filling with people heading to bars and music venues and restaurants. Somewhere out there, a young singer was performing for drunk tourists, hoping to be discovered. Somewhere out there, a waitress was mopping floors and singing to herself. Elena thought about all the nights she had spent in Rosie's Diner, believing that nobody would ever hear her voice. She thought about the people who had given their tip money so she could be here. She thought about her mother, watching the sunset in El Paso, not knowing that her daughter's life had just changed forever. She called Rosa that night from a cheap motel room. The conversation was short, long-distance calls cost money, and old habits died hard. Mama, Elena said, something good happened today. Something really good. I will tell you everything soon. Rosa's voice was weak but warm. I always knew you would fly. The contract was signed, but Elena's struggles were far from over. Riverside Records was a small label with limited resources. They could not afford to put her in an expensive apartment or give her a large advance. The money they offered was enough to survive, but not enough to quit all her jobs. Elena returned to Memphis after the meeting. She walked back into Rosie's Diner the next night, put on her apron, and started her shift like nothing had changed. Her co-workers were confused. They thought she had made it. They thought she was going to be a star. It does not work that fast, Elena explained to Maria. I have a contract, but that is just the beginning. Now comes the hard part. The hard part meant traveling between Memphis and Nashville every week. The label wanted her in the studio on Tuesdays and Wednesdays to work on her album. Elena would finish her Monday night shift at Rosie's, sleep for a few hours, then catch the early bus to Nashville. She would record all day Tuesday, sleep on a friend's couch, record again on Wednesday, then take the late bus back to Memphis for her Thursday shift. It was exhausting. She was sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night. She was eating cheap food from gas stations because she could not afford restaurants. Her body ached. Her voice sometimes cracked from tiredness. But she kept going because she knew this chance might never come again. Marcus became her manager. He did not ask for money. He said she could pay him later, when she was successful. He drove her to Nashville when his old car was working. He sat in the studio during recording sessions, offering advice when asked, staying quiet when not needed. He was learning to be useful again, and Elena was grateful for his presence. The studio was small but professional. The walls were covered with foam panels to improve the sound. The equipment was old but well-maintained. Janet, the woman who had signed Elena, produced the album herself. She was patient and kind, but also demanding. She made Elena sing the same song 10 times, 20 times, until every note was perfect. Your voice is beautiful, Janet told her one afternoon. But beautiful is not enough. We need to find what makes you different. What makes people stop and listen? What makes them feel something they have never felt before? Elena did not know how to answer that question. She just sang the way she had always sung, from her heart, without pretending to be anyone else. She hoped that would be enough. The other artists at Riverside Records were friendly but competitive. They were all chasing the same dream, and there was only so much attention to go around. Elena tried to make friends, but she felt out of place. These people had been singing professionally for years. They had agents and stylists and social media accounts with thousands of followers. Elena had a borrowed suitcase and a bus pass one night. After a particularly difficult recording session, Elena called her mother. Rosa's voice was weaker than the last time they spoke. The medicine was helping, but the doctors said she would never fully recover. She would need care for the rest of her life. How are you feeling, Mama? Elena asked. I am fine, Mia. Do not worry about me. Tell me about Nashville. Tell me about your songs. Elena told her about the studio, about Janet, about the album they were making. She did not tell her about the exhaustion, the loneliness, the fear that none of this would work out. Rosa had enough worries already. I am so proud of you, Rosa said. Your father would be proud too, wherever he is. Elena did not respond. She had not thought about her father in years. He had left when she was 7 and never came back. No phone calls, no letters, no birthday cards. He was a ghost, a hole in her life that she had learned to ignore. I have to go. Mama, my shift starts soon. Okay, Mia. Sing beautifully. Sing for both of us. The months passed slowly. Elena recorded 12 songs for her debut album. Some were covers of old classics. Others were original songs she had written herself. The best one was called Kitchen Floor Prayers, the song about her mother. about kneeling on the kitchen floor and praying for strength when strength seemed impossible. Janet loved that song. She said it would be the first single, the one they would send to radio stations and music blogs. Alina was terrified. That song was so personal, so private, sharing it with the world felt like opening a vein in public. But she had no choice. She had come too far to turn back now. While Alina worked on her music, she also performed at open mic nights in Nashville. Janet said she needed stage experience, needed to learn how to connect with a live audience. So every Tuesday night, after the studio closed, Alina went to small bars and coffee shops and sang for whoever would listen. Sometimes the audience was 5 people, sometimes it was 50, sometimes they paid attention, and sometimes they talked through her entire set. Alina learned to perform no matter what. She learned to smile when she did not feel like smiling. She learned to say thank you even when nobody clapped. The hardest night was at a bar called the Blue Door. Alina was scheduled to perform at 9 o'clock. She arrived early, nervous and excited, but when she walked inside, she saw that the crowd was there for a football game on the television. Nobody cared about live music. Nobody even looked at her. She sang anyway. She sang her heart out to a room full of people who were shouting at a screen. When she finished, one person clapped, an old man in the corner who had been drinking alone all night. He raised his glass to her and nodded. Alina wanted to cry. She wanted to go back to Memphis and forget this whole stupid dream. But then she remembered something Marcus had told her. Every famous singer has a story about the night nobody listened. The ones who make it are the ones who show up the next night anyway. She showed up the next night, and the night after that. Slowly, very slowly, things began to change. One night, a music blogger came to hear her sing. He wrote a short article about her voice, calling it raw and unforgettable. A few weeks later, a local radio station played kitchen floor prayers at midnight, not prime time, but still real radio. A handful of people started following her on social media. A handful became a few hundred. Alina did not feel like a star. She felt like a waitress who was pretending to be something more. But she kept going, kept singing, kept believing that someday, somehow, all of this work would pay off. Marcus watched her grow with quiet pride. He had been right about her voice. Now he just had to help the world see what he saw. It would take time. It would take patience. But Marcus Webb had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. "You are doing great," he told her one night, after a particularly good performance at a small club. "Just keep going. Do not stop. The world is starting to listen." Alina looked at him with tired eyes. "What if they stop listening?" "Then you sing louder," Marcus said. "That is the only secret I know." The album was finished in early spring. It was called After Midnight, a reference to all those nights Alina had spent singing alone in the empty diner. The cover showed her standing in front of Rosie's diner at dawn, wearing her waitress uniform, looking straight at the camera with tired but hopeful eyes. Janet was proud of the album, but she was also realistic. "We are a small label," she reminded Alina. "We cannot afford big marketing campaigns or famous producers. This album will succeed or fail based on word of mouth. People have to hear it and love it enough to tell their friends." Alina understood. She had never expected anything to be easy. The album was released on a Tuesday in April. Alina was working her shift at Rosie's diner that night. She could not afford to take time off for a release party or promotional events. She served coffee and pie while somewhere out there. Her songs were appearing on streaming platforms and music stores. The first week was quiet. A few hundred people listened to the album. Most of them were friends, family, and the small community of fans Alina had built through her open mic performances. The reviews were positive but few. One blogger called her voice a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. Another said the album was heartfelt but unlikely to break through the noise. Alina tried not to feel disappointed. She knew success rarely happened overnight. But it was hard not to check her streaming numbers every hour, hoping for a miracle that never came. Then something unexpected happened. A radio DJ in Austin, Texas named Bobby Garcia was working the midnight shift at a small station. He was bored, scrolling through new releases, looking for something interesting to play. He clicked on Kitchen Floor Prayers by accident. He meant to click on a different song, but once he started listening, he could not stop. Bobby played the song at 12:47 a.m. on a Wednesday night. He introduced it by saying, "I do not know who this woman is, but I think she just broke my heart." Austin was not a big market. The midnight slot was not prime time. But something about that moment, that song, that introduction, it connected with people. By morning, Bobby's station had received over 400 phone calls and emails asking about Alina Reyes. Who was she? Where did she come from? How could they hear more? Bobby played the song again during his afternoon show. Then other DJs at the station started playing it. Then a station in Houston picked it up, then Dallas, then Oklahoma City. Within 2 weeks, Kitchen Floor Prayers was the most requested song in Texas. Social media exploded. People started sharing the song with captions like "This made me cry and she is singing my mother's." A story, a video of Alina performing at a tiny Nashville bar went viral. Someone had recorded it on their phone months ago and forgotten about it. Now it had 2 million views. Alina was mopping the floor at Rosie's diner when her phone started buzzing uncontrollably. She had 17 missed calls from Marcus, 12 from Janet, and hundreds of notifications from social media apps she barely knew how to use. "What is happening?" she asked when she finally called Marcus back. "Turn on the radio," he said. His voice was shaking. "Any station, just turn it on." Alina walked to the old radio in the kitchen, the one Earl used to listen to baseball games. She turned it on and scanned through the channels. And there it was, her voice, singing about her mother's hands, about praying on the kitchen floor, about holding on to hope when hope seemed impossible. She sat down on a milk crate and listened to herself on the radio. It did not feel real. It felt like a dream, the kind you have just before waking up. The next few weeks were chaos. Riverside Records was flooded with interview requests, partnership offers, and calls from bigger labels wanting to buy Alina's contract. Janet worked 18-hour days trying to manage everything. Marcus fielded phone calls until his voice went hoarse. Alina was pulled in 100 directions. She did phone interviews during her breaks at the diner. She recorded video messages for fans between serving customers. She smiled for photographers who showed up unannounced at Rosie's, wanting to capture the singing waitress in her natural environment. It was overwhelming. Alina had spent her whole life invisible, working in the background, hoping nobody would notice her. Now everyone was looking. Everyone had opinions. Everyone wanted a piece of her time, her story, her voice. She made her first television appearance on a morning show in Nashville. She was so nervous she barely slept the night before. The host asked her about her childhood, her mother, her years at the diner. Alina answered honestly, without polish or pretense. She told the truth because she did not know how to do anything else. Then they asked her to sing. The band played the opening notes of Kitchen Floor Prayers. Alina opened her mouth and suddenly felt the fear melt away. This was what she knew. This was who she was. The cameras, the lights, the millions of people watching, they all disappeared. It was just her and the song. When she finished, the host was crying. The camera operator was crying. Half the studio audience was reaching for tissues. "That was incredible," the host said, wiping her eyes. "Where have you been hiding?" Alina smiled, a real smile. "The first one in weeks. Rosie's Diner, 5th Street, Memphis. The pie is excellent." The next day, Rosie's Diner was packed with customers who wanted to see where Alina Reyes had worked. Earl had to hire 3 new waitresses just to handle the crowd. He put up a sign that said, "Home of Alina Reyes," and started charging $5 extra for the apple pie. Alina's album shot up the charts. From nowhere, it climbed to the top 50, then the top 20, then the top 10. Kitchen Floor Prayers became the most streamed song of the month. Radio stations across the country added it to their playlists. Music critics who had ignored her debut now wrote long articles about her authentic voice and genuine artistry. Alina finally quit her job at Rosie's Diner. Her last shift was on a Saturday night in June. All her co-workers came to say goodbye. They had a small party in the back after closing the same storage room where she had recorded her first demo. Maria hugged her tight. "We always knew, Mia. We always knew you were special." Earl shook her hand and said gruffly, "You can have free pie whenever you want." For life. Alina laughed and cried at the same time. These people had been her family when she had no family nearby. They had given their tip money to send her to Nashville. They had believed in her before anyone else did. She flew to El Paso the next week to visit her mother. Rosa was weaker than Alina remembered, but her eyes were bright with pride. They sat together in the small house with the yellow walls, the house Alina had bought last month with her first real paycheck. "I heard your song on the radio," Rosa said. "They played it at the pharmacy. Everyone was talking about my daughter." Alina held her mother's hand. It was rough from years of cleaning, but warm and familiar. "I wrote it for you, Mama. Everything I do is for you." Rosa smiled. "No, me. You do it for yourself. I am just lucky enough to watch." That night, Alina sat on the porch of her mother's house, looking up at the Texas stars. 1 year ago, she had been mopping floors and singing to nobody. Now her voice was playing on radios across the country. People she had never met were crying at her words. She did not feel like a star. She still felt like a waitress from Memphis who got lucky. But maybe that was okay. Maybe that was exactly who she was supposed to be. The melody was still the same. Only the audience had changed. Fame arrived like a summer storm, sudden, powerful, and impossible to control. Within 18 months of her album's release, Alina Reyes had become one of the most talked about new artists in the country. Her debut album went platinum. Her face appeared on magazine covers. Her songs played in coffee shops, grocery stores, and car radios from coast to coast. She moved from her tiny Memphis apartment to a nice house in Nashville. She bought new clothes, though she still felt uncomfortable in anything too fancy. She hired an assistant, a publicist, and a small team of people whose job was to manage her growing career. Marcus remained her manager, though now he had an actual office instead of a kitchen table. The money changed everything and nothing. Alina could finally afford to pay all her mother's medical bills. She could send Rosa to the best doctors, buy her comfortable furniture, hire a caregiver to help when Alina was traveling. That felt wonderful, like finally breathing after holding your breath for years. But with money came complications Alina had never imagined. People started coming out of nowhere claiming to be old friends, distant relatives, former classmates. They all had stories about knowing Alina before she was famous. They all wanted something: money, connections, a piece of her spotlight. Alina did not know who to trust anymore. She started screening her calls, avoiding public places, keeping her circle small and tight. The tabloids were worse. They printed stories about her that were half true or completely false. They said she was dating famous actors she had never met. They said she had fought with other singers she barely knew. They found old photos of her looking tired after long diner shifts and published them with headlines about troubled past and hidden struggles. One magazine ran a story about her father, the man who had left when she was 7 and never returned. They had tracked him down in California, where he was living with a new family. They printed an interview where he talked about how proud he was of his daughter, how he had always believed in her talent. Alina read the article and felt sick. This man who had abandoned her, who had never sent a birthday card or called on Christmas, was now claiming credit for her success. He was using her name to get attention, to feel important, to pretend he had been part of her life. She wanted to respond, to tell the world the truth about her father. But Marcus advised against it. It will only make the story bigger, he said. The best thing you can do is stay silent and keep working. So Alina stayed silent, but inside, she was burning with anger and hurt. The touring was exhausting. In her first year of fame, Alina performed over 200 shows, small venues, big arenas, music festivals, television appearances. She was constantly moving, constantly singing, constantly smiling for cameras. Her voice held up, but her spirit started to crack. She missed the simplicity of the diner. She missed being invisible. She missed singing for nobody, with no expectations, no pressure to be perfect. Now every performance was judged, analyzed, compared to the one before. Critics watched for signs of weakness. Fans expected miracles every night. Anxiety became her constant companion. Before every show, she would pace backstage, her heart racing, her hands shaking. She learned to hide it well from makeup, the lights, the distance from the audience. But inside, she was often terrified. One night in Chicago, she had a panic attack just before going on stage. She could not breathe. Her vision went dark. She collapsed in her dressing room, convinced she was dying. Marcus found her on the floor, gasping for air. He held her hand and talked her through it, slow and calm. When the attack passed, she was supposed to go on stage in 5 minutes. "I cannot do it," she whispered. "I cannot go out there." "Yes, you can," Marcus said. "You have done it 100 times. You can do it again." She went on stage that night. She sang every song. The audience never knew anything was wrong. But afterwards, Alina sat alone in her tour bus and cried for 2 hours. She started seeing a therapist, something she never would have considered before. The therapist helped her understand that fame was a form of trauma. Her entire life had changed in a few months. Everything she knew about herself had been rewritten. It was natural to struggle, natural to feel lost, but understanding did not make the pain disappear. The hardest part was the loneliness. Alina was surrounded by people constantly: assistants, musicians, fans, journalists. But she felt more alone than she had ever felt in Memphis. These people wanted Alina Reyes, the star. They did not know Alina Reyes, the person. They did not know about her fears, her doubts, her moments of weakness. She tried dating, but it was impossible. Everyone she met wanted something from her. Actors wanted publicity. Musicians wanted collaborations. Ordinary people were intimidated or stopped. She went on a few dates that ended awkwardly, with the other person asking for photos or autographs, or her only real friends were Marcus and her team, people who had been with her from the beginning. But even they could not fully understand what she was going through. They were not the ones on stage every night, exposed and vulnerable. They were not the ones whose face was on billboards, whose voice was everywhere, whose mistakes were public entertainment. One night, after a show in New York, Alina stood at the window of her hotel room looking down at the city. 30 floors below, millions of people were living their lives, cooking dinner, watching television, arguing with their families. Normal lives. Anonymous lives. She envied them more than she could express. Her phone buzzed. It was her mother. Rosa called every night before bed, no matter where Alina was in the world. The sound of her voice was the only thing that still felt real. "How was the show, Mia?" "Good, Mama. The crowd was wonderful. You sound tired." "I am always tired." Rosa was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you remember when you were little, and you used to sing in the kitchen while I cooked? You were so happy then, just you and the music and nothing else." Alina felt tears forming. "I remember. Find that happiness again, Mia. All of this, the fame, the money, the crowds, it means nothing if you lose yourself. Promise me you will take care of your heart." "I promise, Mama." After hanging up, Alina sat on the edge of her bed and thought about her mother's words. Somewhere along the way, she had lost something. The joy she used to feel when singing, the pure, simple joy of the empty diner, had been replaced by pressure and performance and fear. She needed to find it again. She needed to remember why she started singing in the first place. Not for fame or money or platinum records. Just for the music. Just for the feeling of opening her mouth and letting something beautiful come out. But how do you go back when the whole world is pushing you forward? Alina did not know the answer, but she knew she had to try, because if she lost herself completely, all the success in the world would not matter. She would just be a famous ghost, singing songs she no longer believed in. That was not the life she wanted. That was not the life her mother had dreamed for her. She had to change something. She just did not know what yet. The tour ended in November. Alina had been on the road for 8 months, visiting 43 cities, singing for over 500,000 people. She was exhausted in ways she could not describe. Her body ached. Her voice needed rest. Her soul needed something she could not name. She went home to Nashville, but home did not feel like home. The big house was empty and quiet. The furniture was expensive and uncomfortable. She walked from room to room, touching things that belonged to her but did not feel like hers. For 3 days, she did not leave the house. She slept, watched television, and ignored her phone. Her team sent messages asking about her schedule, her next album, her upcoming appearances. She ignored them all. She needed silence. She needed space. On the 4th day, she woke up with a clear thought in her mind. She needed to go back to Memphis. She did not tell anyone. She packed a small bag, got in her car, and drove for hours on the interstate. The drive felt familiar and strange at the same time. She had made this trip so many times when she was recording her album, sleeping on buses, counting pennies, hoping for a miracle. Now she was driving a luxury car, wearing expensive clothes, carrying more money in her bank account than she ever imagined possible. She arrived in Memphis at sunset. The city looked exactly the same: the blues bars, the barbecue restaurants, the old buildings along the river. Nothing had changed. Only she had changed. She drove to 5th Street and parked across from Rosie's Diner. The neon sign was still there, glowing red and white in the evening light. The home of Alina Reyes banner hung in the window. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, just watching people come and go. Finally, at 2 in the morning, the same time Marcus had first walked through that door years ago, Alina entered the diner. The night shift was different now. Maria had retired. Earl had sold the business to his nephew, a young man named David who did not recognize Alina at first. The other waitresses were new. The cook was new. Everything was familiar but different. Then David's eyes went wide. "Oh my God, you are Alina Reyes." The other staff turned to look. Someone dropped a coffee pot. Someone else started crying. Within minutes, the few late-night customers were staring to. People pulled out their phones to take pictures. The quiet diner became a small circus. Alina smiled and shook hands and posed for photos. She was gracious because she had learned to be gracious. But inside, she felt the old Alina slipping further away with every flash. After an hour, the excitement calmed down. The customers finished their meals and left. David and the staff went back to their work, still glancing at Alina with disbelief. She sat in booth 7, Marcus's old booth, and ordered coffee and apple pie. The pie tasted the same. That, at least, had not changed. Around 3 in the morning, when the diner was nearly empty, Alina asked David a strange question. "Can I mop the floors?" David looked confused. "Excuse me, I used to work here. I used to mop these floors every night after closing. I was wondering if I could do it again, just once." David did not understand, but he also did not say no. Famous people were allowed to be eccentric. He handed her the mop and bucket and stepped back, watching with curiosity. Alina took the mop and dipped it in the soapy water. The handle felt familiar in her hands, rough wood, slightly crooked, worn smooth by years of use. She started mopping, moving between the tables the way she had done 1,000 times before, and then, without planning it, she started to sing. It was an old hymn her mother had taught her, a simple song about finding peace in troubled times. Her voice echoed off the tile walls, just like it used to. The fluorescent lights hummed along. The world outside disappeared. For 10 minutes, Alina was not famous. She was not a platinum artist or a magazine cover model or a name on billboards. She was just a woman with a mop, singing to herself in an empty diner, finding peace in the only way she knew how. When she finished, she realized she was crying. Tears were rolling down her face and dripping onto the floor she had just mopped. She did not wipe them away. She just stood there, holding the mop, feeling more like herself than she had felt in months. David and the staff watched in silence. They did not know what to say. They did not understand what they were witnessing. But they knew it was something private and important. Something that was not meant for them. Alina finished mopping. She rinsed the mop, emptied the bucket, and put everything back in the supply closet. Then she walked to the counter and left a $100 bill as a tip. "Thank you," she said to David, "for letting me do that." "Anytime," he replied, still confused but moved by what he had seen. "You are always welcome here." Alina walked out into the Memphis night. The air was cold and clean. The streets were empty. She could hear music coming from a bar a few blocks away, some young singer performing for drunk tourists, hoping to be discovered. She remembered being that person. She remembered the hunger, the hope, the desperate belief that someday her voice would matter. She had achieved everything she dreamed of and more. But somewhere along the way, she had forgotten why she started. Music was never supposed to be about fame or money or awards. It was supposed to be about connection, the connection between a voice and a listener, between a heart and a song. It was supposed to be about truth. Elena got in her car and drove to the river. She sat on a bench and watched the water flow past in the moonlight. She thought about her journey, the diner, Marcus, the demo, the rejections, the breakthrough, the chaos of fame. It all seemed so random, so unpredictable. A different DJ could have clicked on a different song. A different producer could have walked into a different diner. Her whole life could have gone a different way, but it did not. She was here, now, alive and successful and lost. And she had a choice to make about what came next. She could keep chasing bigger stages, bigger audiences, bigger numbers. She could play the game that the industry wanted her to play. More tours, more albums, more interviews, more everything. She could become what they expected her to become, or she could remember who she was. A waitress from Memphis who sang because singing was how she survived. A daughter who loved her mother. A woman who found peace in simple things, mops and buckets, and empty diners and songs that came from the heart. The sun started to rise over the river. Elena watched it paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. She felt something shift inside her, not a dramatic change, but a quiet decision. A promise to herself. She would keep singing. She would keep performing, but she would do it on her own terms. She would remember the diner, the struggle, the people who helped her when she had nothing. She would never let fame turn her into someone she did not recognize. She took out her phone and called Marcus. It was 6 in the morning, but he answered on the second ring. He was always awake, always worried about her. Elena, is everything okay? Everything is fine, she said. I am in Memphis. I went back to Rosie's. Marcus was quiet for a moment. How was it? It was exactly what I needed. I remembered why I sing, Marcus. I had forgotten, but now I remember. She could hear him smiling through the phone. That is the best news I have heard in months. I am coming back to Nashville tomorrow. We need to talk about the future. I have some ideas. I am ready whenever you are. Elena hung up and walked back to her car. The sun was fully up now, warm on her face. Memphis was waking up around her, people heading to work. Buses rumbling down the streets, life continuing its endless routine. She was still Elena Reyes, famous singer. But she was also still Elena Reyes, waitress who sang alone in an empty diner. Both of those people were real. Both of them mattered. Now she just had to find a way to be both at the same time. 10 years had passed since Elena Reyes first sang into a microphone in the storage room of Rosie's diner. In that time, she had released 5 albums, won 3 major music awards, and performed on stages around the world. Her songs had been played at weddings and funerals, in hospitals and churches, during celebrations and heartbreaks. Her voice had become a part of people's lives in ways she never could have predicted. But the thing Elena was most proud of had nothing to do with awards or album sales. The Elena Reyes Foundation for Music Education had started, small, just a few scholarships for kids in low-income communities who wanted to learn instruments or take voice lessons. Elena had funded it with her own money, without any publicity or press releases. She did not want credit. She just wanted to help young people find the joy that music had given her. Over the years, the foundation grew. Donors joined. Corporate sponsors signed on. The program expanded to 20 cities, reaching thousands of children who would never have had access to music education otherwise. Elena visited the programs whenever she could, sitting in on lessons, listening to young voices, remembering what it felt like to dream without resources. One afternoon, she visited a community center in Houston. The students, mostly teenagers from working-class families, had prepared a small concert in her honor. They sang songs she had written, their voices rough and untrained but full of heart. Elena sat in the audience and cried. Not from sadness but from gratitude. After the concert, a young girl approached her nervously. She was maybe 15, with braids in her hair and a notebook clutched to her chest. Miss Reyes, the girl said, I want to be a singer like you, but my mom says I should focus on something practical. She says music does not pay the bills. Elena smiled. She had heard those words before from herself, from her own mind, during all those years of doubt. Your mom is not wrong, she said honestly. Music is hard. Most people who try to make it do not succeed. The odds are against you. The girl's face fell. Elena continued. But here is what I have learned. The odds do not care about your talent. They do not care about your dreams. They are just numbers. What matters is how much you love it. If you sing because you have to, because not singing would feel like not breathing, then you will find a way. Maybe you become famous. Maybe you do not. But you will always have the music. And that is worth more than any award or paycheck. The girl nodded slowly, processing the words. Then she opened her notebook and showed Elena the pages inside. They were covered with handwritten song lyrics, messy and crossed out and rewritten, but real, evidence of a young heart trying to express itself. These are beautiful, Elena said, reading a few lines. Keep writing, keep singing, and when things get hard, because they will get hard, remember that someone believed in you today. Marcus was 67 now, and he had finally stopped drinking. 5 years of sobriety, one day at a time. He still managed Elena's career, though at a slower pace. They did not need to chase every opportunity anymore. They could choose the projects that mattered, the performances that felt right. Their relationship had evolved over the years. In the beginning, he was her mentor, the experienced producer guiding a raw talent. Then they became partners, equals in the business of making music. Now there was something like family. He had been sober at her wedding. He had held her hand at her mother's funeral. He was the person she called when things fell apart and the person she celebrated with when things came together. Rosa had passed away 3 years ago, peacefully, in the yellow house in El Paso that Elena had bought for her. Elena was holding her hand when it happened. Rosa's last words were simple. "Sing for me, Mia." So Elena sang. She sang the old hymns from their kitchen, the songs that had been passed down through generations. She sang until her mother took her final breath and the room fell silent. The grief was enormous, a weight that never fully lifted. But Elena carried it the way her mother had taught her, with grace, with faith, with music. She wrote an entire album about loss and memory and the love between mothers and daughters. Critics called it her most powerful work yet. Elena was 37 now. She had been married for 4 years to a quiet man named James who worked as a teacher. They had met at a charity event, and he had not recognized her at first. When he finally realized who she was, he shrugged and said, "That is nice. But can you tell me about your favorite book?" She fell in love with him that night. They lived in a modest house outside Nashville, nothing fancy, nothing designed to impress. Elena had learned that big houses felt empty and expensive furniture felt cold. She preferred comfort over luxury, privacy over publicity. She still cooked her mother's recipes in the kitchen and sang while she cooked, just as Rosa used to do. She still performed, though less frequently than before. She chose her shows carefully, now smaller venues, meaningful causes, places where the music felt intimate and real. She had stopped chasing the biggest stages and the largest crowds. She had realized that connection did not require numbers. Sometimes the most powerful performances happened in rooms with 50 people, where she could see every face and feel every heart. On the 10-year anniversary of her first album, Elena returned to Memphis one last time. She walked into Rosie's diner at 2 in the morning just like she used to. David was still running the place. He greeted her like an old friend. She sat in booth 7 and ordered coffee and apple pie. The taste brought back a flood of memories: tired feet, aching back, empty pockets, endless hope. She thought about the young woman she had been, mopping floors and singing to nobody. That woman had no idea what was coming. She could never have imagined this life. A reporter once asked Elena what advice she would give to young artists trying to break into the music industry. She thought for a long time before answering. "Sing for yourself first," she said. "Before you think about audiences or labels or fame, find the songs that matter to you. Find the truth in your own voice. Because the music industry will try to change you. It will tell you to be louder, softer, different, better. And if you do not know who you are before you start, you will lose yourself along the way." She paused and added, "Also, be kind to the people who help you. Remember their names. Pay them back when you can. Success means nothing if you achieve it alone." Elena finished her pie and left a generous tip on the table. She walked out of Rosie's diner into the warm Memphis night. Music drifted from somewhere down the street, a young voice singing in a bar, hoping to be heard. She listened for a moment, then smiled. Somewhere in this city, in every city, there were people like her, dreamers with mops and buckets. Artists with tired feet and endless hope. Most of them would never be discovered. Most of them would sing alone forever. But some of them would find their way. Some of them would be heard. And when they made it, Elena hoped they would remember where they came from. She hoped they would carry their stories with them, like she carried hers. The melody was always inside her. The diner just gave her a place to let it out. That was the truth of Elena Reyes, a waitress who became a singer, a daughter who became a legend, a woman who never forgot the taste of apple pie at 2 in the morning, the smell of soapy water on a mop, the sound of her own voice echoing off empty walls. She got in her car and drove toward home. James was waiting for her. A new day was beginning, and somewhere, on a radio in a truck stop or a phone in a teenager's hand, one of her songs was playing. The world was listening, and Elena Reyes was still singing, just like she always would.